All right, guys, what's up? It's Jack, and welcome back to another video. I finally want to discuss this. So, I guess I'm going to be doing like a fun topics thing like every Sunday because I just quite enjoy it. By the way, for those of you guys that stopped by the stream last night, I just wanted to thank you guys once again. It was a hell of a lot of fun, and it could have gone even longer, but I guess I just got too tired. But with that being said, let's talk about the discussion of today's fun topic now, shall we? And I had a couple of topics to choose from, and I chose this one. And that is the Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul fight. So I'm going to put my 2 cents on it, and I guess we can have a fun conversation about this down in the comment section below. Because there's two sides to this, okay? You got Jake Paul, who is 27 years old and in the prime of his life, and he's done pretty well for himself when it comes to boxing and all that stuff, and putting his name out there, promoting himself. You got to give credit where credit is due to the young man. He's been very successful with a lot of the things he's done. And on the other hand, you've got a 57-year-old who's going to be 58 by the time this fight happens, in Mike Tyson, who is arguably the best heavyweight boxer that is ever put on the gloves. Okay, and I say arguably because there's about one or two other names that would be in contention for that kind of accolade. And the one that comes to mind immediately at the snap of a finger is Muhammad Ali. But it's a really big debate if those two were to actually fight, who would win. It really is a big debate among people of both generations. But one thing I do know is that it is true when they say there are certain things that just don't leave as easily, right? With Mike Tyson. Now let's break this down real quick, okay? Jake Paul he's got youth on his side, right? He's got youth on his side, and that is a major advantage. No matter how you look at it, the 30-year age gap or 31-year age gap is a major advantage. It is something that you do not underestimate one bit. Youth has a ton of advantages, everything from your reflexes, your endurance, your stamina, your power, your recovery time. I mean, you name it. Youth is something that is absolutely incredible, right? And the thing is, you don't appreciate it as much until you get to a certain age, to where things don't quite work like they used to. And at the same time, that is Mike Tyson's biggest thing that kind of stands in his way, is the fact that, well, he's not as young as he used to be. However, the interesting thing is this: as far as any other category is concerned outside of youth, right? Outside of youth, right? Outside of the age difference, Mike Tyson has in my opinion, Mike Tyson has every other advantage to easily win this fight. Okay, besides it, like if age was not a factor, this would be a freaking joke. Like, people would still tune in, right? I mean, well, first of all, I don't even know if Jake Paul would even challenge Mike Tyson if Mike Tyson was in his prime. You see, back in the day, nobody challenged Mike Tyson, right? It's like, oh, you got to fight Mike Tyson, and then the fight, the other fighter would be like, oh shit, here we go. Kind of like the Grand Theft Auto meme. Oh shit, here we go again. But nobody in the day, nobody wanted to fight Mike Tyson, okay? And the vast majority of fighters, like 90% of the fighters that Mike Tyson faced in his career, okay, got knocked out within the first round, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, the majority of his wins are by knockout. This is a statistical fact. Okay, now here is the thing. Obviously, Jake Paul has fought some other fighters here and there, but those guys, a few of those guys were MMA fighters. Okay, one of them was an entertainer, I think, KSI or whatnot. I think there was, what else was there? Tyrone Woodley, and then even Anderson Silva, I think. Look, yeah, those guys were past their prime as well, but that was a boxing match. Those guys are MMA fighters. Okay, if it was the octagon, I guarantee you, Jake Paul would have lost both of those fights. Okay, so, and see, that's the thing. Like, a lot of MMA fighters, what they'll do is they all have a strength of some kind, right? A lot of them have, like, let's say, really good jiu-jitsu background. Like, let's say if you were Gracie and you enter an MMA fight, obviously your weakness is going to be your stand-up, but your strength is going to be on your ground game. So you work on your stand-up game in order to even yourself up or whatnot, right? But the thing is, MMA fighters mix things up. They have a variety of tools to take you out with, and boxing is just one of the many things that they focus on. But it's not nearly to the same level as a professional boxer who does nothing but box. Okay? But even then, even if you're not a professional boxer, going up against an MMA fighter in a boxing match, unless that MMA fighter was known for their boxing, which most MMA fighters are not, if not any at all, to my knowledge. You can have good boxing, but it's still like, the level of depth that boxers get into their art is insane. And let's not forget about the fact that you've got the professional level here. You guys remember how I've always said that there's a big gap between the professional and the amateur, right? That there's a big gap there for a very big reason, okay? And just like in gaming and just like other aspects, I mean, when you've got arguably the best ever, okay, heavyweight champion with insane knockout power in Mike Tyson, et cetera, that has ever done it, the experience factor and everything else that comes with it is something that doesn't really leave very easily. And it really depends on the fighter in terms of which is the last to go. Some professional fighters that believe that in boxing, yes, power is the last thing to go. Others believe that it all kind of goes or whatnot. I mean, it really depends on who you talk to. And I also think it depends on the fighter themselves. Because, for instance, we know that Mike Tyson's biggest strength was his power. Let's just be real here. I mean, and granted, the man was fast, too. Fast. And there's also a whole lot of discrepancies going on in terms of the footage that people are watching on Instagram or in YouTube Shorts or whatnot of him, hitting the bags and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, some people have said that footage was taken before the Roy Jones fight, when Mike Tyson fought Roy Jones. Okay, so whether or not that's true remains to be seen. I don't know if it's been confirmed or denied yet. But one thing I do know is that, regardless of age, now we know that age is a big factor, and when a man is not in his prime anymore and he's well past his prime, he's not the same man he used to be. There's absolutely no doubt about it, and there is a chance. I mean, here's the thing. At the end of the day, whether Jake Paul has an advantage or not, he still has what we call puncher's chance, right? You get in there, anything can happen, right? And all it takes is really one mistake and that one moment for that other opponent to capitalize on that mistake to end it all. It really doesn't take much, nor does it take the most amount of power ever to knock somebody out. You need a clean, good technical hit to the chin in order to knock somebody out, and I can tell you wholeheartedly that it doesn't take the biggest hit to put somebody on their ass, to knock them out for a TKO, okay? It really doesn't. So, obviously, when you have power and technique and all that kind of stuff added into the mix, well, this is why Mike Tyson almost always knocked people out when he connected, especially back in his prime. And if we're going to take, let's just say for a minute here, that the footage that he's posting is like for more recent times, you can't you can't underestimate that. That's still incredible speed. That's still incredible technique. That's still incredible power. And on top of that, we live in a world today to where, things like testosterone replacement therapy and other things such as peptides and all that kind of stuff are, readily accessible and legally accessible as well, and monitored by doctors. So that have done a lot of great things for people that are older, right? Hell, even for the younger, but for the most part, for the older people, like used as medicine, so to speak, right? They've done incredible things for them. And it's not like, and on top of that, it's not like you're facing your average 58-year-old man. Whether things like testosterone replacement therapy or peptides, even if those things were not a thing, you still don't underestimate an old man who's been through the shit. And with all due respect to Jake Paul, he hasn't been through the shit like Mike Tyson has. He doesn't have the level of experience that Mike Tyson has. He hasn't fought the boxing professionals over the years as Mike Tyson has. He hasn't put in the same amount of time into that specific art that Mike Tyson has. See, you know that all that practice that Mike Tyson did in his younger days, all that still plays a role today because that is experience, that is time, that's things learned like 30 years or so. I mean, I don't know. Let's just say anywhere from 20 to 25 years of total, you know, boxing time for Mike Tyson, right? Let's just say that it could be longer actually. Like because obviously when he stopped boxing, he stopped for good up until getting ready for that Roy Jones fight. So there was a lot of gap in between to where he stopped. If he hadn't stopped, then oh my god, that would be even more insane. But despite that, though, you know, despite the gap, you can tell just by watching that footage, whether it was a lot more recent or whether it was just a few years ago when he fought Roy Jones, you can tell that the phenomenon, and this is true, it's very true. Muscle memory is a wonderful thing, and it doesn't just apply to driving cars or riding bikes. You know how they say once you ride a bike, you never forget how. That's muscle memory. It doesn't just apply to things like that. It doesn't just apply to, you know, it applies to like everything. It applies to sports. It applies to lifting weights. It applies to martial arts, reflexes, timing, all that kind of stuff. Now, again, Mike Tyson is not in his prime, but there is going to be a percentage of that that's going to come back. And my thoughts are it really depends on how much of that is going to come back and which Mike Tyson shows up. You know, if the hungry Mike Tyson shows up, then Jake Paul, I think, is going to have a hard time regardless of the age gap. But with that being said, when you're older and you're Mike Tyson, you know, you're like mentioned before, you're not quite as much as you used to be, so therefore you're more susceptible to either getting knocked out or just getting hit and all the consequences that come with that. You know, the reflexes and all that kind of stuff are not as there as they used to be. Now, remember, guys, when you're talking about professional athletes or former professional athletes, people that are in their prime versus people that are not in their prime, you know, to the average folk, it looks like this guy is still in his prime from the way he moves and the way he punches, to the average folks, right? But to people who know, whether it's through experience or through the fact that they've watched this person over the years, it's still not a prime Mike Tyson. There's still going to be things that are going to be missing, and they're not going to be quite as there as they were before. One of the biggest things, obviously, that's almost that's not almost, but it's most definitely going to play a role is the endurance. Now, I know this is going to be an exhibition match, and they're going to be wearing like heavy ass gloves with a lot of padding on them. Maybe 2 minute rounds and a total of 8 rounds, and you know, I mean, but at the end of the day, though. At the end of the day, so a lot of people might even say that it's just a, you know, a promotional sparring match or something like that. Okay, still that's fine. You know, people still get knocked out in sparring. People still bleed in sparring. It's, you know, so now with that being said, you know, Logan Paul, you know, again, he doesn't have to land the hardest hit or anything like that. He's got puncher's chance. He's got youth. He's got the endurance. He's got the recovery. He's got so many advantages that kind of almost make it even. And that's the thing. Ultimately, one of the biggest things that is drawing people's interest to this fight is because there is the age-old question of experience versus youth, and they both have their advantages. And I would say it really just depends on the two people that are going at it, really, because you can have another match like this with another boxer and another young guy, and the results can be completely different than what we might see with Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul. Okay? So whoever wins or whoever loses or whoever has the upper hand or the lower hand or whatnot, it's not the definitive answer to the whole age versus youth. You know, because the thing is, you can't deny the power of youth, as mentioned earlier, and at the same time, you can't deny the experience factor either. See, that's the thing. It's like, okay, you lose your youth, but you gain wisdom, so to speak, and experience, right? And that plays a role. Like I remember one time, and this is a true story here. I'm gonna tell you guys a true story that I seriously can't believe I'm saying this, but anyway, so I was 28 years old. Obviously, I had age and youth on my side, and I remember doing a labor job with my dad. Rest in peace. And we worked in another state, and we were doing labor-intensive work. And even in his early 60s back then, you know, the man was incredible. You know, there's a reason why all those younger guys that were in their 20s, you know, had a lot of respect for my dad. And that was because even at his age, he was doing some stuff that like would turn heads, you know, in terms of the fact that, you know, he could keep going. I mean, granted, he wasn't in his prime, but like it was still amazing to see that he could be an above average worker regardless of his age, right? And the things that he could do. He'd still get tired. He still have his endurance. Things weren't like they used to be when he was younger, sure. But like the man was able to keep going once he got his second wind. You know what I mean? And so during a shorter period of time, the man was very reliable, just like the youth was, if not close to it, right? And I saw it all before my very eyes. Like I would get gassed out. I would get, all those different things. And sure, I saw dad, he'd be tired too, but he wouldn't be gassed out like me. And the thing is, he was experienced so much for so many years of doing that hard, intensive labor job that he knew and understood how to use his energy more properly so he could be a little bit, so he could last longer during the day and use it in a way that would benefit him. So whenever he needed to turn it on, he would have it. But the way he did it, in terms of the way he would use his technique and the way he would use his body to move things around or to do whatever it is he needed to do, depending on the job itself, made him not more technically sound and a lot more reliable at work. But it made him just last longer. Like his battery just burned at a slower pace, despite the age factor. And that was because of his level of experience. He knew when to push, he knew when not to push, and he also had that technique in terms of to where he could get the maximum results with minimal amount of effort. Okay, and when I'm saying this, if you apply this to the Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul fight, Mike Tyson has this on his side. No matter how hard, and I know Jake Paul is working hard, at least according to what he says, and according to, and I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. So let's say Jake Paul is working, his ass off or whatnot. Okay, no matter how hard he works, no matter how many hours he puts into boxing from now into the fight, he is not going to catch up to in terms of to where what Mike Tyson has learned and applied over the culmination of years. And let's not mention the fact that Mike Tyson was fighting professionally against professionals and sparring against, high caliber people. As a matter of fact, there was one point in time where people didn't want to spar Mike Tyson. Like that's how it was. People didn't want to spar. They refused. They got offered insane money to get in there and spar with him, and they refused. You know what I mean? So you know what? There's something to be said about that, dude. So and to this day and age, like I can tell you right now, if they were to say, "Hey, we want to put you in the ring with Mike Tyson," I'd be like, "No, thank you." Like I guarantee, no, thank you. I'm good. I mean, granted, I never boxed. I was a martial arts guy, so I did my jiu-jitsu, I did my taekwondo, and had a little bit of kung fu here and there and stuff like that. But boxing is totally out of my realm. But even if it was an anything goes fight, I still wouldn't want to get in there with Mike Tyson, despite the fact that he's older now. You know what I mean? And obviously in his prime, I wouldn't either. Like I remember when I first started watching Mike Tyson's footage and everything like that, I was like, I remember thinking to myself, and I was a teenager at the time, I believe. I remember thinking to myself, like, who in the hell, in the right mind, would want to get in the ring with this guy? You would see how he'd knock people out the way he did. You would see how intimidating he looked. You would see like what his personality was like. You would see, like when you look at his physique, man, you see nothing but power there. He's got those monster ass quads. He's got a very strong upper body, and on top of that, he could move. Fuck that. You know what I mean? So that's something too. Believe it or not, that plays a role as well. And in one hand, I want to say that Jake is lucky that he's not facing a prime Mike Tyson, because even though Mike Tyson, can still be scary to this day, let me tell you, prime Mike Tyson, way scarier than current Mike Tyson. I will tell you that 100%, man. Just look. I remember just watching his footage was scary. Just looking at the man, even before the bout itself, I was like, holy shit, dude. Like this, I gave my props to the whoever stepped in the ring with Tyson. Even for those that won, I gave them extra props, because I'm like, dude, that's a scary thing to actually be in the ring with a guy like that. And every single professional boxer that has ever faced Mike Tyson knew what was coming. The question is, could they stop it? And 90+% of them couldn't. And they all lost. Most of them lost very early, within like the first 2 to 3 rounds. Okay, most of them, I believe, in the first round. So, and these are like high caliber, top 1% professional boxers. Mike Tyson became the youngest heavyweight boxer at age 20. Okay, at age 20. His first bout that he ever did as far as I know, as far as like amateurs to qualify to be professional or something like that, or maybe professional, I'm not sure. It lasted 8 seconds. Okay, 8 seconds. Okay, and going up against other boxers that have put in their time like he did. Okay, and yet, his first bout, 8 seconds. It's very it's and on top of that, that carried over into his pro career. I mean, there's like when fights would last a minute or less, a lot of times in the professional level, on that level of consistency, like holy crap. So now again, going back to Jake Paul, because obviously I've been talking so much about Mike Tyson in this commentary. When it comes to Jake Paul, again, that youth and that everything that comes with that youth, with the fact that you're so enthusiastic, you're so hungry, you're so for whatever it is that your goals are, when you're young like that, it's absolutely incredible. It is absolutely incredible. And of course, there's a chance that Jake Paul can win this fight. And yes, of course, there is a chance that it could be by knockout. But again, you're going up against Mike Tyson. I remember somebody put something in the comments section of one of the videos that I was looking up when it comes to pertaining to this fight, and that they said this is the equivalent of Michael Phelps challenging a very old shark to a swim race. And he continued on to say, I don't care how good Michael Phelps is, that's still a fucking shark. And when I read that, I actually laughed out loud. I that got a legit laugh out of me when I read that. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I don't care if it's an old Mike Tyson. It's still Mike Tyson. And that's the thing. A lot of people in this day and age of this generation, unless they went back to look at footage and stuff like that, they really just don't know how scary it was. I mean, all you could do is hear stories, and sometimes it's like hard to believe or whatnot, right? Because it just sounds so mythical and legendary. But no, this man Mike Tyson is respected as much as he is for a very big reason. It's kind of like no different than the whole Michael Jordan, LeBron James thing. A lot of the current generation of basketball fanatics would just, say how much better LeBron is when they absolutely have no idea what Michael Jordan was capable of and what Michael Jordan did. And even if they watched The Last Dance, they got a good taste of it, but it was still like, it's not the same as actually being around in that era and literally seeing it happen right before your eyes. You know what I mean? Because it's one thing to hear about something, but it's a whole other thing to like literally see it before your eyes, whether it's on TV or whether it's in real life. It is a whole other thing when you see it happen, and when you see it happen consistently. And it's the same thing with Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson consistently knocked other professional boxers out in the first round. And if not the first, it was usually the first three. And most of them was probably the first, though. An incredible record. The 90+% of his victories are by knockout. It is an incredible accomplishment. And that's why Mike Tyson is who he is. And I don't care, I mean, again, it all depends on who shows up. If the Mike Tyson that, needed a wheelchair or a cane like that to stand shows up, then we got a problem. But if the Mike Tyson that we see in the footage shows up or whatnot, and he's hungry and shit like that, I'm not going to lie. For those, like, let's say it's an 8-round exhibition, those first 3 rounds, like, Jake Paul is going to have to survive those first 3 rounds. You know what I mean? Especially if Mike Tyson's not playing around, if he's going for that knockout. Jake Paul is going to have to survive those first 3 rounds. If Jake Paul survives the first 3 or 4 rounds, then after that, it's on him. But those first 2 to 3 rounds, whatever happens in those first 2 to 3 rounds is going to determine what happens in the rest of the fight. If the fight is legit. Because there's always a possibility that it may not be legit. But let's just say, for argument's sake, that it is legit. Those first 3 rounds are going to decide what's going to happen in the rest of the fight. If Mike Tyson doesn't get a knockout on Jake Paul in the first 3 rounds, then I'd say that. Then after that, I'd say everything shifts to Jake Paul's favor. If Mike Tyson does what he does within the first 3 rounds, then obviously Mike Tyson wins. Pretty simple as that. So I'd say for the first 3 rounds, Jake's going to be in survival mode. and after that, you know, after that, let the chips fall where they may. So uh, that's my take on the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight. Who do I want to win? I want Mike to win, but I also live in reality, and I also understand that there's a decent chance that that may not happen. But the only chance that that may not happen is because of the whole age factor thing. That's it. So, will Mike Tyson's experience and and gifts that he's obtained over the years, is he going to have a good amount of that? Is he going to have enough of that left to take Jake Paul out? Only time will tell. Nobody knows the answer to that question. That's what makes this fight so fascinating. We don't know. And at the same time, is youth going to be good enough for Jake Paul to take Mike Tyson out? Now, here's the thing. Even though in the first 3 rounds, it's, it seems to be like Mike Tyson would be, the bigger favorite of the two, like I mentioned a minute ago. How amazing would it be if actually Jake Paul knocked Mike Tyson out within the first 2 to 3 rounds? Now, that would be amazing. I think that is something that I think people will talk about, honestly. So at the same time, I think Jake Paul might know this and be like, you know what? If I really want to prove myself more than anything, I got to knock this guy out like early, just like he used to knock guys out, early. But at the same time, I don't even know if Jake Paul can do anything to prove himself because, again, he's fighting a nerfed Mike Tyson. I got to respond on Twitter about this when I mentioned it, and it's like nobody really wins. If you think about it, if Jake Paul wins, they're gonna be like, yeah, you knocked out an old man, 31 years older than you. So it's like, what does he win over it? I mean, I don't know. I guess it just depends on how you look at it. I guess I don't know, but and then obviously, if Mike Tyson wins, people are gonna be like, of course, But there's people out there that I think it's still fascinating if Mike Tyson wins because it would show a lot. It wouldn't be a definitive answer for every case for every person, but it's pretty interesting to see that. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is just because like if Mike Tyson wins, it doesn't mean that Michael Jordan at age 57 or however old he is now would win a one-on-one currently with the current LeBron James now. Okay, no, don't get that shit confused. No, he would not. But if Michael Jordan was in his prime and LeBron James is in his prime, okay, then you've got something to talk about on whether or not one could beat the other. And just an FYI, I'd take Jordan over LeBron in that aspect too, just for argument's sake. But anyway, but yeah, that's my take on Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul. It's a big question mark, and it really can go either way. You got puncher's chance, obviously, and then you've got youth versus experience. It's gonna be interesting to say the least if it's not rigged. But yeah, let me know down in the comment section what you guys think about this. So with that being said, I think I'm done. Talking about it. I think I've said everything I need to say, and yeah, love to hear what you guys think down below. And as always, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this fun little commentary and topic, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.